Hello and welcome to Doug's Front Porch, a podcast where I get to sit down with friends, old and new, and have honest conversations. Today, I welcome to the front porch John Striffler, an old friend from college who I've known a long time. And I'm so happy, John, that you agreed to come on and be a guest. So welcome to my front porch.
Thanks, man. It's great to be on your front porch this morning.
Yeah, you win the prize so far for the longest distance away from the front porch. And we'll talk a lot about this in the conversation in this episode. But John and I are talking right now, of course, via the internet. But John, tell everybody where you are right now.
I'm in Seoul, South Korea. It is about 8:20 in the morning here on a Saturday morning.
And it is Friday night at 7:20 in East Coast time here in the United States. Technology is amazing. This is crystal clear phone call. It's just unbelievable what we can do these days. John, well, I guess talk a little bit about how I know you. I got to meet John in college. We both went to Lock Haven University together, and we ended up having quite a number of classes together because we had some shared interests, and we'll talk about that here in a couple minutes. So I've known John now for, this is about 20 years, huh? Or going on 20 years, right? We're getting old, John. We're getting old.
20 yikes.
Well, I want to start here because you aren't originally from Pennsylvania. I mean, you ended up in Pennsylvania for college. We'll talk about that. But tell everybody where you grew up and maybe just briefly, did you have brothers, sisters? What was your I don't want to go real deep into your childhood, but definitely talk about a little bit about, your formative years.
Yeah, so I grew up in New York City, Staten Island, New York. I have one older brother. I live with my parents and my brother growing up on Staten Island. Went to Catholic school my whole life on Staten Island growing up. So first through eighth grade in the same school. And then I went to an all boys Catholic high school, Monsignor Farrell High School, which was interesting. But with that, I've been fortunate enough to have actually the same friends since basically the first grade through that process. And we're also really good friends, which is great.
That is good. Yeah.
After that, after high school, took a little bit of time off before I started college and did some stuff, and then ended up starting Lock Haven University in 1999, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I want to ask you, what out of all the places, here's this guy, growing up in the shadows of Manhattan, and you choose Lock Haven University, this small liberal arts school essentially in the middle of nowhere, central Pennsylvania. How did you come to that decision?
Yeah, after several years of not being in school, I just started looking at some schools, and it's funny, I hadn't thought about this in a long time, so you just asked it. Like a friend of mine and I we saw this school. It looked like a small school. It looked really cool. So me and him and his girlfriend just kind of drove out there on a whim one weekend, and we said, let's just go check it out. And we drove out to Lock Haven and walked around the campus, and I just absolutely loved it. And I was like, this is where I want to be. So it was small town. I wanted to be in a small town, get away from the city, and that's kind of what I wanted. So.
Well, that's awesome. And how did you come about choosing well, tell everybody what you ended up studying in college.
Yeah, so and I studied theater and German, and that's how I met Doug, this theater German program, I think. And as soon, when I went back to school, I was like, I definitely want to major in theater, and I could speak a tiny little bit of German, not like my sort of mentor here, Doug here. But I got involved in both of those programs, and it's been a real blessing because actually my career has led me into both of those fields, which has been great. So
right. So did you grow up doing theater and music? Were those major parts of your childhood?
Yeah, I did a lot of community theater in Staten Island. I belonged to a parish called Holy Family, and there was a guy named Mike Whalen, and probably in seventh grade, I started playing the drums for the pit band, and then got on stage and did some acting, and kind of been doing that ever since. It's been great. So.
And then German just came along, and you did the same thing that I did at Lock Haven and took advantage of the study abroad program. And spent some time in Germany.
You were in Paderborn as well, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah. Right.
So spent some time in Paderborn. That was awesome. Learned a lot of German there. What a great city that is. And that program, you get to kind of travel a bit while you're there, and the professors are really cool about that. And
was that trip, when you studied abroad, your first taste at international travel, or had you traveled outside of the United States before that?
No, I definitely had done some traveling outside of the United States before that. And but that was my first time. I was with my grandparents on some trips and lived, was in Germany some other times. And it was good, though. That was my first study abroad experience. So it was great. It was absolutely good.
And as a foreshadowing a little bit to how you ended up in Korea, but yeah, this idea of I interviewed someone else on the podcast that had done the same thing and talked about the importance of how instrumental studying abroad was in the development of becoming the person that he ended up becoming as an adult, and how it influenced so many ways and things about him that he never expected when he got on that airplane to fly to his destination. The same thing kind of went with me. I left, farmer's kid, first time really away from home. And, get on that plane and it's like, that's it, man. I'm not, at the pre-internet days when we were over there. And I know that, it really builds up a resiliency in, well, it can for some people. Did you find that to be the case as well? Like you were over there on your own, not really knowing anybody. Was it an easy adjustment for you when you first got to Germany when you were studying abroad, or were there some hurdles to overcome?
No, it was actually really great. I can't remember the name of the group. Maybe you do. There was like that group on campus that kind of connected with study abroad students, and
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of that group, but I ended up fitting in with some of those people and just made a really good group of friends that I actually still chat with them, some of them to this day. Um, and they just took me in, and we had a great time. Like went to classes, did some traveling together, went to France, went to Belgium, Luxembourg, kind of
Yeah.
did a lot of traveling was there. And I just felt like, and again, we'll tie into this later, but it just that was kind of a spark for me, to hey, this overseas living thing is a great thing. You know what I mean? So,
Well, let's okay. So you get back from Germany, you eventually graduate from college. What happens next?
so in my last year of college, I met my who would become my future wife, and she had transferred in from a Pittsburgh school, Pitt Bradford, and I was finishing up and got accepted to the University of Hawaii, his master's program in fine arts for theater. And my wife ended up transferring there with me, so we both moved to Hawaii in 2006 and spent 3 years studying theater there, and she finished up her degree in education.
Okay, I'd forgotten that you were in Hawaii for that time period. That's right. How did there's a question I have to ask. Out of all the places that you could have gone to grad school, what made you was Hawaii one you were like, this would be so cool to study here, or was it the program was like, oh, this is a great program, I want to take advantage of it, if I can get in, or how did you come to choosing out of all places the University of Hawaii?
Yeah, so I studied children's theater, like performing for young audiences, and there were two programs I was looking at: University of Hawaii and actually the University of Montana in Missoula.
Those are so like polar opposites, when you think about it.
So I flew out to Montana for an audition, and it was like kind of in the winter. I remember it being the winter, and I was like, "What am I doing? It's freezing here. It's snowing." And I was like, so I got accepted to these programs, and I was like, we're definitely going to go to Hawaii. There's no questions asked. And the program in Hawaii is tremendous.
That's awesome.
The theater program is tremendous in Hawaii, so it was great. It was a great choice.
So you got your master's, then what happens?
So we moved back to the States, not to the mainland, and ended up kind of living in Pennsylvania just for a little bit. We're looking for jobs, and my wife was having a little trouble finding some teaching jobs in Pennsylvania, and she ended up getting this interview in Maryland. So we drove down for the weekend to Maryland, and I'm sitting in this office, and I have no teaching credential. I'm just kind of sitting with her, waiting for her to come out. And this guy in human resources just happened to say out loud, like, "I wish I knew someone who spoke German." He said something like that, and I just happened to say, it was sort of that one of those kismet things. And I was like, "Hey, I speak German," and he's like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah, I speak German." He's like, "Do you want a job?" And I was like, "Well, I don't have a teaching license. I speak German, but I've never been trained to teach." And he's like, "Well, there's this job available at this high school. Do you want to go and interview?" And I went and interviewed that day, and I ended up getting the job. And we started like 4 days later.
And you learned as you went, right?
Yeah, the first day of teaching, I'd never taught a class. I was teaching German to start with. I was teaching German levels 1 and 2, and because they didn't have a full program at that point, I ended up teaching some English classes as well.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, my first day of teaching was definitely like feet to the fryer kind of thing. I had never done that in my life.
So
Um,
did the education bug bite you then, and it was like this is something that you found joy in teaching, or I mean, because something had to happen because you're still in education today. So what was it about that? Not having any background, and then all of a sudden, boom, here I am. I'm a professional. I'm actually getting paid to do this. And what was it about teaching that sucked you in?
yeah, I mean, I know you've been teaching for a long time, and I can see from the stuff you post online how much you love your kids. And it was the same thing for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially in the German classes, they were just so they were really good kids, and they really wanted to be there and learn the language and just have a good time in the class. And it was great. I was, just kind of right out of grad school. I was like, hey, let's teach. And I did that for several years. And I was able to grow the program. And I started, like I said, I started with German 1 and 2, and I ended up growing it through German 1 through 4 and AP level German. And I had, about 160, 170 kids in the program at one point, and did some trips with them. And it was great. I really, really loved it. And about into my 5th or 6th year, I started thinking about becoming an administrator. And then I started kind of
Hmm.
doing that as well. So I got my degree in school administration, and then I started pursuing that. And so after about,
I want to ask you a question about that. Is I haven't, I've been teaching for almost 20 years now, and I've had tons of administrators come and go throughout my career. What was it? What was it about administration that you were interested in? Why did you think about that as something you wanted to pursue?
one of my favorite things in any education job I have is working with teachers and kind of just being in their classrooms and sort of in a very, trying to think of the right word here, just a very easygoing way, just talk about lessons with them and watching them teach and coming back to my office and just talking through lessons and saying, hey, what worked, what didn't work? You did
Hmm.
some great things. Did you look? And that's the favorite part about being an administrator for me, is that stuff, just being in classrooms and watching great teachers teach. I just love that part of it.
That is one of the benefits I think of it when I think about the job of a principal or an assistant principal, and if it's being done correctly, it's they're there, but they're never to the point where that I'm constantly looking over my shoulder worrying about what are they watching? What are they doing? It should be somebody that melds into the wall, so to speak, when they're in the classroom. But then you can have that kind of rapport where you can go and talk shop and hopefully maybe get help, or also just have somebody there that's supporting you as a teacher and knows that has created a relationship that hey, he has my back in the event of X happening, or with a difficult parent, or these situations that arise in education. It's a funny balance I think administrators have in maintaining their love of the classroom and the love of working with kids, but then you also have the whole other side of the coin where you're dealing with bureaucracy, you're dealing with people above you, you're also dealing then with the outside world, parents, outside agencies. How did you find was it did you find it easy to strike that balance, or was it a struggle at first?
Yeah, I mean, jumping into being a new assistant principal is a hard job. Like it's a steep learning curve. There's tons to learn. Just like it was for me being a teacher, because I hadn't been a student teacher. So it was kind of the same thing. Just day one, show up, and I had to, when you do student teaching, it prepares you, but it doesn't prepare you for what it's actually really,
Sure.
right? Like, so same thing. I took these classes, but on the first day, you get into being an assistant principal, and things are happening that they've never taught you. So yeah, definitely a steep learning curve, but a lot of really great experiences, and I really met a lot of my really good mentors in administration. So it was great. It's been a great process being administrator. I have to say, it's been really, really good.
Well, now we have to get to the big elephant in the room, is the fact that you are calling me. We're talking, and you're in South Korea, and let's talk about that. So you are at. Tell us a little bit about the school that you're at right now.
So the name of the school I'm at is Seoul Foreign School. The name of the area I live in is called Yeonidong in Seoul, and it's a private international school. It's grades K through 12, and we actually have a British school on the campus as well. So the British school, they don't talk in grades; they talk in year groups. So it goes from reception, they call it, which is like pre-K, through year 9, which is grade 8, and then everyone filters into the same high school. And it really, if you've never looked at the website, I mean, the school is tremendous.
I'll definitely include a link to the school so people can check out the website when they hear the episode. What kind of instruction is all in English across the board?
Yep, all in English across the board. Students obviously can take foreign language. They can take Korean, take Chinese, take some French, and take some Spanish. So
What kind of students do you have there? Like, where are these students coming from? What are their families like? Why are they there?
there's a lot of Korean American students. There's a lot of British students, Aussies, kind of really students from all over the world. Plus, obviously, students from Korea as well. There's students from embassies. Their parents work in embassies, for companies, for just different international organizations. So I mean, literally, kids from across the globe are at the school.
Okay. And is it an in-house program? Like, or are they living in dorms on the on a campus, or is it they come to school? Their parents live in Seoul or whatever, and they get the bus, come to school. Like the typical American school system. How's that?
Yeah, so they don't live on campus. Actually, most of the faculty, if not all the faculty, live on campus. I live on
Oh,
campus.
okay.
But the kids take buses here, and they're kind of really. I mean, it's pretty. Seoul is a city of about 11 million, so it's a pretty big city. And you can come to this school from anywhere in Seoul. So kids get up pretty early to get their bus and come across Seoul and get here. And the campus is just state of the art, world class. Like, and it's
Yeah, some of the pictures that you've posted and stuff that I've seen online, it is unbelievable.
yeah.
Is it based off of tuition funding, or is there money coming from the state, or how do they afford all this stuff?
Yeah, so obviously tuition is a big part of it. There's donors and alumni donors and
Oh, okay.
kind of stuff like that as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any money. I don't think there's money coming from the government. I'm not 100% sure about that, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
I don't deal with that part of the school at all. So
Sure.
definitely tuition is definitely a thing. So that
So, how did you see an ad for this job, or how did it even come about?
yeah. So my wife and I had been talking for a while about living and working overseas. So you may have heard of them. There's a group called Search Associates, which is kind of like a headhunting group for teachers and administrators, and
Okay.
it's based in the States, I think. So you hire this company and you give them all your information, your resume, your CV, all that stuff, right? And you get a consultant, and then the consultant works with you to set you up to go to job fairs. So we ended up going into this job fair in Cambridge, Massachusetts, about 3 years ago. So I was going there with the assumption I was going to be an assistant principal or apply to be a principal. And my wife was looking for my wife teaches special she's a special educator. So
And did you have like a wish list of destinations, or were you game for whatever?
yeah, we were pretty much game for whatever.
That's
We
awesome.
were pretty open minded. Pretty was yeah. I mean, I can tell you, going in there, I was never like, oh, I want to live in Seoul. Like that never even crossed. We just went in there looking for places to work. Um, so we went to this fair, and it was like over a weekend. And when you go in there there's like a separate day for administration, and you go in there and there's all like just these booths, and you walk around like doing these quick interviews with people. And I had done a few interviews for assistant principal, and kind of like towards the end of it, we walked past this booth for Seoul Foreign School, and they have a sign up, and it said at the time was director of performing arts. And I said, oh, that sounds cool. Like, let me just check out and see what that was. So there was a guy there whose name was Stuart, and he interviewed me. And how it kind of works is it's in a hotel, so you interview in the hotel room with these representatives, right? So my wife and I went in there and interviewed, and I was like, this place sounds too good to be true. There's no way I'm getting this job. Like, it just sounds too amazing. So I made it past the first interview, and then I ended up interviewing with my predecessor. And then I made it past that round, and I had to interview several days later with the head of school on a Skype conference. And I ended up interviewing with him several days later, and I got offered the job, and it was just amazing. So we were moving to Seoul.
Yeah, yeah, crazy. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, I'm moving to the other side of the world.
Yeah,
How is that? Like, how do you even plan for something like that?
yeah. So that was a huge undertaking, getting rid of our house and kind of selling a lot of stuff, putting stuff into storage, and then just working with the school. Like the school works with you when you get hired to get your visa and all your kind of appropriate paperwork. So that's like we got hired. I want to say at the end of January of 2018, and it took about 6 or 7 months. We left to come here in July. So that whole time was just preparing to come here and getting rid of the stuff in the States, getting rid of our house, all that kind of stuff, and getting ready to come here.
It's so great. And both your wife's family and your family were completely supportive, or did you get a lot of like, do you really want to do this? Are you sure? I mean, what kind of reception did you get when you told everybody?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were really excited. I think her parents were too. They knew, like my parents had known for a while that we wanted to live overseas, so it wasn't like a shock to them.
Uh-huh.
They were upset. We have a daughter, who just turned 9, and they were kind of they were definitely upset that she was leaving. I don't know if they were upset that I was leaving, um, but yeah, but they were definitely supportive. It was cool. So
So tell me a little bit about like major differences and similarities between the system that you're current having worked in the American educational system, and now you're in this, which is kind of a unique situation, I think, where you are. Uh, what are some of the differences and similarities that you find?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, oh, man, there's a lot. So my job. So I'm going to start with my job. My job. When I started last year, I was the director of performing arts, and then I was able to become this year director of arts. So what I mean by that is last year I kind of oversaw all of the drama and music programs, and this year I was lucky enough to sort of encapsulate visual arts into the program as well. So I oversee literally the whole arts program for the school. The teachers here are just world class, amazing teachers. And I, like I said, like from K through 12 in across all sections, I oversee all those programs. So I would just say, from an art standpoint, the arts programs compared to where I was coming from are just kind of far above and beyond. Like the kids um, have arts every day. There's multiple things they can take. They're really super. And not that kids in the States aren't. I don't want to make it sound that way because it's not that way. But the arts program here is just phenomenal. So that would be the first thing I would say.
Okay.
In terms of the school,
How do you? Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
it's all good. Are you an IB school? Are you an AP school? Are you?
We have AP at my school. Yeah.
Yeah, so the school here is an IB school. So
Uh huh.
the elementary school, middle school, and high school are IB schools. The British school works on the English national curriculum through something called the IPC IMYC, which is I'm not going to say I'm an expert in that because I'm not, but it sort of parallels the IB program. So
Okay.
coming in here, I was definitely like at novice level IB. So it's that for me, the learning curve in IB has been steep. In the 2 years I've been here, I've definitely learned a lot about PYP, MYP, and DP programs specific to the arts, and that's been huge for me. So
So how's your Korean?
my Korean is good enough to get in a taxi and say possibly how to go somewhere, and good enough to get in the cab coming back and say the name of my school in Korean, so I can get
Okay.
home and say a couple of other random words like please, thank you, here, like stuff like that. So my Korean is not
Right.
awesome. My daughter's Korean is definitely better than my Korean. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I've never been to South Korea. I've never been to Asia, actually. Is Seoul English friendly in the sense that, if I'm a tourist and I come to Seoul, I'm gonna be okay if I don't speak any Korean?
There are going to be parts that are okay, and there are going to be parts that are not as easy to not as okay. Like we manage every day. Like they have stores like Costco and IKEA and those types of stores here. And when you go in
Uh
there,
huh.
you can definitely go in there and do what you need to do. When you're in kind of some of the smaller stores, that's not as easy. But you know what? That's on me. It's incumbent on me to learn the language of where I'm living. Right? It's definitely not on.
Sure.
So I see that as a goal living here is to learn Korean. I definitely plan on taking some classes while I'm here.
How long do you see yourself staying? Is this like a permanent move, do you think, for you guys? Or
Oh, definitely permanent. Definitely permanent.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our first contract here was for 2 years, and now we've just re-signed, and hopefully there's no end in sight.
That's awesome.
Living here, you get to, we've done so much travel. We've traveled to Australia, to Thailand, to Japan, to China. So lots of travel in the last 2 years. It's been great.
Yeah, yeah, I've been following your adventures every time. I'm jealous in that sense. You get to go to these awesome places. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I'd love to make it over there at some point. I really
we
would.
would love to have you here. So bring the family over for sure.
That would be awesome. That would be
Yeah,
awesome.
another. I was thinking back to your question about differences. Another huge difference is the amount of travel students get to do here. Um, like starting almost in the British school, starting like at about 10 years old, kids get to travel internationally. Um,
Mhm.
and music groups and theater groups at my school, they get to travel every year. Like in these audition groups, you can travel several times a year to the Middle East, to Europe, obviously throughout Asia. Last year, my wife was a permanent substitute teacher at the school, so she was able to like chaperone some trips, and she went to Austria with some kids, and she went to China with some kids, and this year I was scheduled to go to Dubai with some kids actually, and then obviously COVID-19, and we canceled all that stuff. But the kids here get really great opportunities to travel. Like another great. I mean, you're in a high school, right? You're in a high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So like they have something here called in high school called DW, Discovery Week, and basically the whole high school for the week, quote unquote, shuts down, and kids travel all over the world for a week. And that's the week.
Jeez.
And that's the week. And I'm not talking like they travel in Korea. They travel. I went this year. I went on Discovery Week to London with kids, and we saw theater for a week in London. Um, they go to Israel, to Ethiopia, to Malaysia, to I mean, like literally, we're all over the world.
That's insane. That
Yeah,
is it's so awesome, but it's also so it's so incredible in the sense like it's hard to believe. Like the real sense of the word incredible is that that your students have these awesome opportunities. That's so great. That is
yeah.
really really
In
great.
London, I went to London with two other teachers and about 22 students, 23 students, and we had the opportunity to see about 9 shows in 7 days. Um,
Yeah, that's all. Oh my gosh.
plus just kind of going around London to all the touristy London stuff with that. So I mean, it was great.
Right.
It was cool.
Um, I wasn't going to ask this question, but I have you on the phone. I'm going to ask you anyway. So you're living in South Korea, and here in the United States, we get a lot of news, of course, dealing with your neighbor to the north right now.
Okay.
How What's the sense or what's the feeling like there where you are in Seoul or at your school or just in in the general media in South Korea in regards to the relationship with North Korea?
Yeah, I'm probably going to give you a disappointing answer to that question.
No, that's fine. Yeah,
Um,
just tell me the truth.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the disappointing. I say it's disappointing because I tend not to um, follow the news all that much here. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
most of the news here is in Korean, of course. So
Hmm.
the one paper I do read here online is called the Korea Herald, which is an English written language paper. Um, but most of the stuff I'm reading up on now is just about Korea's handling, which I think is excellent. Korea's handling of COVID-19, which has been
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah, and you guys, Korea got a lot of positive play in our news here for how South Korea handled or is handled the situation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of I tend not to the politics here and politics of even politics in America. I tend to sort of I guess it's a blessing if you want to call it a blessing, or I tend to try to just live in my world here and just do what we're doing. You know what I mean? And
Right, right. No, right, absolutely.
um, the people of Korea are just such generous, lovely people. So I focus on that, how giving our school is and how wonderful it is to be here. And Korean people and just in general are just amazing. So I
Yeah,
just kind of
that's
do
great.
that. I just kind of live that life. So
Uh, why not? Why not? Right.
yeah.
I ask all my guests this. So, what I mean, you have a busy job. Probably there's quite a lot of stress involved. What do you do for recreation? How do you, John Striffler, relax?
Yeah, so before this whole sort of COVID thing, we were able to travel quite a bit, which was great. And I know you love travel as well, so I know that
Hmm.
relaxes you. So that's definitely one thing. Being on campus, like one of the things I always envisioned about moving abroad was living on a campus and becoming a part of a community, of a campus community, and that part is great. Like we have access to we play tennis. I just started taking tennis lessons. We play golf. I have a golf group that I hang out with and just kind of hanging out, like going out. Same thing as over there, man. Just going out, hanging out, going out for a drink, just relaxing, hanging out with friends. But it's kind of easier in a way that you're on campus, so you can just kind of walk outside the building, and there's kind of generally always speaking people outside to play with. Same as like
Yeah.
for my daughter, there's always kids around to play with because they're always in and out of the house. Um, the one thing I would tell you about South Korea that it's kind of hard to believe unless you're here is how safe South Korea is for being such a large city. So
Okay.
um, the best example I give, which doesn't seem real, but it's real, is like you could go, like we live on top of a hill. So to get up to my school, you kind of drive up this big hill or you walk up this really steep hill, which is kind of awful. Um, and you go down to the bottom of the hill and you can, if you're up on the hill, you kind of feel like you're not in the city. You're just kind of on this campus. But as soon as you get down the hill, you're back in Seoul, right? You're in a big city. It's like being in New York City, right? So you go down the hill and there's coffee shops just everywhere. And you can go into a coffee shop in Seoul and genuinely, if I was talking to you in the coffee shop, I could leave my laptop, my phone, and my whatever on the table and kind of walk away from it, not be looking at it, and it's no one's going to touch it. No one's going to do anything. Like it's no one's going to take your stuff. Like it's pretty much the safest big city I've ever been in my life.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So which seems like unrealistic, but it really is realistic. Like it's just
No,
you can be kind of anywhere. I mean, and I'm generalizing because I'm sure that there's stuff that happens, but you don't really. It really, generally speaking, is the safest city I've ever been in. So
so you're a poster child then for the South Korean tourism board, I guess we'll say. And
no, I mean it's great, and there's just like I said, it's like living in Manhattan. So there's stuff to do all of the time. Like there's
that's
museums
awesome.
and just anything you want to do. Like there's theater, music, anything you want to do, you can do. It's a big city, so.
That's awesome. Well, John, end all of my interviews with 10 quick questions, similar to like inside the actor studio type thing, but not the same questions that James Lipton asked. So I'm just gonna throw them at you, and I'm curious to see curious to hear your answers. Are you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, number one, and I think I know the answer because you already mentioned this. What is your morning drink of choice?
Oh, definitely latte. It's my morning drink.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is Korean coffee? Do they have a coffee culture, or is it more of a tea culture there?
Oh my God, it's the biggest coffee culture I've ever seen anywhere ever.
Really? Okay. And is Korean coffee stronger, or how do you compare it to American coffee?
Oh, I think it's stronger, and it's. I mean, like I said, you could go down the hill from our school and just walk down the street, and there's about 55 coffee shops within walking distance to our school.
That's crazy.
So the
Okay.
coffee
Okay.
culture is huge here. It's huge.
Okay. Number two, this I'll be curious about this answer. Who is your go-to musical artist or group?
Oh, it's an easy answer for me. My number one all-time favorite musical artist is Elvis Costello.
That's a great answer. Yeah,
Um,
he's good.
Huge
Yeah.
Elvis Costello fan. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Broadway guy and all that stuff, but
Uh-huh.
single rock sort of stuff is Elvis Costello's my guy.
Okay. Okay. Number three, what movie can you watch over and over again and it never gets old?
I'm more going to give you an actor than a movie. Tom Hanks.
Okay.
Tom Hanks is my guy. So most Tom
So
Hanks movies I'm into. So
yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Four. What's the last thing you read?
I'm actually reading a book right now called The Culture Code, which is kind of like a leadership sort of group dynamic book that I'm reading right now.
Okay, okay. Five. What's your favorite pizza topping?
I'm pretty easy. Pepperoni. Pepperoni.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Six. Laying on the beach or going for a hike?
Oh, laying on the beach. It's not even a
Okay,
question.
okay, okay. Seven. You invite me over for dinner. What are you cooking?
Well, first of all, I'm probably not cooking. My wife's probably going to be the one cooking. But if I am
Okay,
cooking, we're going to be grilling up some steaks or something on my barbecue.
okay, okay. Eight. What is a this? You've been so many places. What is a dream vacation destination of yours?
So we're planning. So Australia was my dream destination, and we were able to do that this year. And it was fantastic. My next one, we want to go on safari in Africa. So that's my next
Oh,
huge
yeah, that's really high on my list too. That is really high
one.
on my list.
So if we can travel this Christmas, we're going to go on safari in Kenya and Tanzania. Is our thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait to see those pictures. Let me tell you.
But Australia, when you think of a dream vacation, Australia lived up to everything I ever thought it would be.
Did it? Okay. Yeah, I have friends there that we have an open invitation to Australia anytime we want to go, and just haven't done it yet. But it's definitely someplace that is on my list too, to visit.
And the
Yeah.
other thing for me is I want to say that I've been to all 7 continents. That's another.
Okay. Yeah. No, that would be something cool, right?
Yeah.
Number nine. What is something you're afraid of?
Birds.
Okay. Like all birds, or like
Well,
any
like,
kind of bird?
it's funny. Like, so my wife will laugh at me for saying. So, growing up in New York, um, there's like, I shouldn't say I'm afraid. I'm just kind of grossed out by them, right? Like, so, and I'll tell you if it's okay to tell you a quick story. I hope it's okay.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Growing up in New York, like there's pigeons and crows, and they're kind of gross, right? So I've always been kind of grossed out by birds. And I don't know if you know this, but when I lived in Lock Haven, I farm sat for a guy. Did you know that? Or
No, I
yeah,
didn't.
yeah. So do you remember what was the name of that? Do you remember across from Walmart there was that barn that did theater? I can't Millbrook,
Yeah, Millbrook.
right?
Yes.
So I did summer stock there for a couple of years, right? So there was
Hmm.
a guy who was like the president of the board of that organization. His name was Don, and he would always look for like a theater student to farm sit for him. Um, so I inherited the job from somebody, and I would go out to his farm on weekends, and he wouldn't be there. I'd just hang out on the farm and feed his animals. And when I had met my wife, we were dating, and I had to go into the chicken house and get eggs out, and I would be so petrified of going in the chicken house. And I would tell her, like, hold the door open so I can run out in case any of these chickens. So I don't like birds, is what I'm telling you. It's really what I'm telling you.
That's great. Okay. Last question. What job other than your current one would you love to have?
Oh, I definitely want to be the principal of a school. I mean, it's definitely been an assistant principal. I've done this job, and I really, really want to be the principal of a school.
You're ready to take all the reins, right?
I mean, I don't know if I'm ready, but that's what I want to do.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
I do. I definitely want to be a principal.
All right, John, thank you so much for doing this. It was so great catching up with you and hearing some stories from your life that, I knew a lot of the background, but never heard like the real stories, the facts, like what made you. I was so curious to talk to you, especially about the situation you're currently in. I mean, it's for most Americans, it's such a, well, no pun intended, but it's such a foreign concept to just pack up and move to a country where you don't speak the language, where you don't know anybody. Some Americans do it, but it's such a small percentage. So, I really wanted to hear from you what that whole process was like, and you talked about it. I find it so fascinating, so fascinating. I guess you could tell people like these are things that are not impossible, right?
Yeah.
It's like don't hold back, right?
No, just kind of live it out. Like I think for a while we thought it wouldn't be possible, and then we were blessed and got the job, and we just did it, and it just took the plunge and didn't look back, and we love it, and I don't think we'll ever go back. So
That's awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for being on the show. And like I said, I'll put a link in the show notes to your school so people can check out the school's website.
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I appreciate that.
No,
So thank you for listening. No, go ahead, John. Sorry.
thanks for letting me be on the front porch this morning or
Oh,
evening.
my pleasure was all mine. No, seriously. When I was making the list, when I work on my list of future episodes, you were one of the first names that got put on the list. So, because I was so fascinated to pick your brain about some of this stuff. So I really appreciate you, finding the time to be able to do this with me.
Thanks a lot, Doug. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you for listening to Doug's Front Porch, a conversational podcast with your host, Doug Maidenford. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just look for @Doug's Front Porch. Also, please feel free to tell all your friends about the show. I'll see you all next time on my front porch.